Oh, the old parts cannon. This 2015 GS350 have had two parts cannons over the past 7 months, and it's still not fixed. And it is just beyond my comprehension why this car was not fixed 7 months ago by the owner. Because the owner actually diagnosed this car properly, they just hesitated and decided to take it to a professional who for 4 months decided to throw their best parts cannon at it and not fix the car. And then the second shop also threw their best parts cannon, similar to the first one, that's the best part, and still haven't fixed it. Let's talk about the problem of this car and why some diagnosis that are simple just needs to be done. And it was not done in this case. Let's get started and we'll talk about it. Let's talk about what the problem with this car is. This beautiful 2015 GS350 has an electrical problem. It drains the battery very rapidly. I mean, we're not talking overnight. We're talking a few hours. The battery is completely dead, just flat dead. That condition is called parasitic draw, meaning you have something drawing while the car is off. Every car will draw a little bit when it's off. All the security system is on, everything is on, but not to a point where it killed the battery overnight. Some cars will draw more than others and they will not last past a week. Example of that, LS430s. You will leave them for a week or two, they'll be very weak, almost if the battery is not fully healthy, it won't start. You take a look at that LS400 right there. That one, you could leave it for eternity and it'll start because the parasitic draw on that is very low. This sits somewhere in the middle. This is, although this is a modern car, but it's not really the most modern car on the planet. That's what makes them good and reliable. Here's what happened with this car. The owner of this car is an avid DIYer. They try things and I admire that. And they get full credit for this one, except the hesitation, which we're going to talk about. They knew that they had a parasitic draw. They went on YouTube, taught themselves how to check for parasitic draw, which I'm going to show you in this video in case. Diagnosed the car almost correctly. They knew what was the parasitic draw. They knew what was potentially causing it, but they hesitated. And because they did not have the wiring diagrams, they decided, let's take it to a professional. Let's take it to a shop because we need the car back. Take it to the first shop. Hey, battery's dying on this car. Parasitic draw. Here's what we found. Can you please continue diagnosis and figure it out? Sure. Well, the shop kept the car for 3 to 4 months. Diagnosis like that should not take that long. It should be a week. Hey, we are making progress. Here's where we're at. We need more time. And better yet, we need to charge you more because I hope they were not working on this for 4 months. I'll tell you what I think actually happened. Here's what they decided after 4 months of having this car. This car needs a battery and needs an alternator. Okay, well, I mean, the owner at that point, a professional mechanic shop, decided to diagnose this car as it needs an alternator. Doesn't make sense to them, but hey, maybe they don't know because that's what the DIYers usually think. They put the alternator, put the battery, the car died the very same day. As soon as they parked it for a while, it's dead again. Well, they contacted the shop, back and forth. They decided they don't want to deal with the shop anymore because they don't know what they're talking about. Kept it this long and the car is not fixed and it dies the same day that they pick it up. That's kind of bad. Take it to another shop, which was supposedly better. That shop kept the car for a while. Customer didn't share with me how long they kept it, but I have a feeling it's a long time because this car has been off the road for 7 months. Something so silly, you're going to laugh, but it's not a laughter moment for the customer because it's sad. They told him it needs a battery and an alternator. Again. Wait a second. We just had this alternator replaced. Oh, they put a bad alternator. And the battery's stone dead. We need to replace it again. Okay. Maybe they are right. I mean, it's at this point, the customer is kind of hopeless. I need my car back. Please fix it. Well, it was not fixed. Same thing. Until they got tired, they started researching more, found our shop, found our channel, They were hesitant, and I remember that hesitancy. Hey, this has a parasitic draw. I just replaced the alternator and the battery. Don't tell me it needs that again. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you because I haven't seen the car yet. I need to see it. There's something going on with this car. We need to find it. I can't tell you over the phone what it's going to need, alternator, but all I can tell you is if it has a parasitic draw, I can find out if the alternator is causing it, because in very rare cases, the alternator can cause a parasitic draw, but it's very simple to unplug it and see if that draw goes away, and we'll know without replacing the alternator. He heard that, he liked it. We were really booked up at that time. It took some time for this car to come to the shop. It came. We spent actually a lot of time. And let me pop the hood and I'll talk to you about how you approach diagnosis like that, because I see this mistake all the time. Number one step, you need to start with a healthy battery when you're diagnosing parasitic draw. Because if you have a battery that has 7 volts because it's dying, you're going to get all kinds of erroneous readings. This car is fixed now. I'm going to show you what it's supposed to be like. And we're going to just do this quickly. We're not going to lock, because for parasitic draw, you want to lock the latch, take the key away from the car, lock it, wait over 20 minutes. I'm not going to do that. There are 2 methods to do parasitic draw. You either use a little amp meter, if you're an electrician, for example, house electrician. You already have this in your toolbox. You can just use it. If you're not, I'll show you both methods to do this. This is the easiest one, but the more expensive one, because you need an amp clamp. I'm going to set this on amps, and we're going to go on the negative terminal of the battery. It's going to go around it. Right now the car is on. This is considered high. If you come and see it, Jose will show them a little shot of it. This is considered high, but again, my door is open, my keys in the car, everything. But this is not bad. Flickering actually 0.2, 0.3 amp. That's not bad. Do you want to see how this car showed up when we actually got it, how much draw it has? Look at that, keep an eye on that, and I'm going to reduplicate the issue that we found with it. I want you to see how much it was drawing. Would you look at that? I have 23 amps peak. It's dropping. Eventually, it's going to creep down to 5 amps. It's already down to 17. 5 amps. Do you want to get an idea what 5 amps is in a car? I will actually show you. Let me fix the issue real quick, and we'll turn on a light. I'm going to turn on the interior lights. I'm going to make sure that they're on. All the interior lights are now on. Let's take a look at our amp meter. 1 amp. So if I leave all my interior lights on, I'm drawing 1 amp. Now watch this. I'm going to shut them off, and we're going to take it to the next level. I have the headlights on. These are high intensity discharge HIDs. I have, look how low it drops to. Let it settle down. I have roughly 4 amps, and it's dropping down. 3.5. So when you're drawing over 10 amps, that is a massive amount. I mean, right now I shut it off 0.8 because all my computers are still alive. And eventually it's gonna, if you leave it for 20-25 minutes with the doors locked, hood closed and everything, it'll dwindle down to less than 0.1 amps. That's how draw is. Now, let's talk about the diagnosis of this. The best way to describe parasitic draw diagnosis is in finding a needle in a haystack. Once you find it though, you're gonna look at it and be like, this is so simple, how could I not find it? But that's the whole point. Because what you're trying to do is, you're gonna isolate every single circuit in the car until you find one circuit that when you isolate it, the parasitic draw goes away. Very time consuming. And the easiest way to do it, to start pulling fuses. If you pulled all the fuses in the car and nothing happened, start pulling relays. This is the part that most DIYers miss, and this is what caused this DIYer spent all this money on a new alternator, this aftermarket, horrendous, 2 alternators, 3 batteries, and the car is not fixed. And they were on the right track. They pulled fuses, but they did not pull relays. That's the difference here. See, we spent a lot of time on this because we went through the normal channels. We pulled every single fuse one by one. Nothing dropped that except the big fuses. Don't pull big fuses because you want to isolate small circuits, not big circuits. If I pull the main fuse, well, obviously I disconnected everything. Well, which circuit within that fuse did it? I hope that makes sense. The way the car is programmed is, or wired, you have one giant fuse that feeds multiple branches, and sometimes 130 amp fuse will feed multiple branches. You don't want to go at a fuse that feeds multiple other fuses. You want to go with the little one so you can isolate one circuit. This one threw us for a loop a little bit because nothing was making sense. We pulled every single fuse in this car. Parasitic draw was holding steady at 5 amps. When the battery started dying, we had to recharge it and start all over. Few methods you can do in this case. You can use a thermal camera. You will actually see that some of the relays are live and they're getting hot. When your car is off and everything's locked, everything should be the same temperature. If you see one fuse or one relay or one component is hotter than the rest around the electrical components, start investigating that because that is one method. The second method is pull things out. Here's what we have with this car, and this is just, I don't understand why a shop couldn't do this simple diagnosis. Time consuming, yes, but you gotta do it. If you have a bad alternator, very rare cases, an alternator could internally has a short, start causing a draw. Just unplug it. Unplug the alternator, unplug even the big wire if you have doubts about it. Well, if there was something going on inside the alternator, when you unplug it, you should lose your parasitic draw. Not in this case, because that's one of the first things we unplug. Maybe we have something going on with them alternators. Unplug them, nope, we still have 5 amps draw. 5 amps, that's a lot. I mean, this is something massive. The headlights don't draw this much. As you've seen here, they'll start high and then they come down, but this is steady. Here's where we end up finding the Lexus GS. On the vents in the center, on the cold climate package, which this is a cold climate package, they have 2 PTC heaters inside the vents. So when you start the car cold, it's very cold outside, while the engine warms up the coolant, these PTC heaters will come on, warm up the air coming out of the vents until the engine warms up, and then they shut off. There's 2 of them, one for each, PTC1, PTC2. These are very high amperage heaters that draw a lot of power, so they put a relay for them. And that relay looks like this. That's the relay. Watch what happens when I plug this relay to our reading. Look at that. 6.5 amps. As soon as I plug it in, as soon as I take it out, it's back down to what it was before. Most folks will be, oh, the heater is stuck on. Let's go chase it down. Let's go replace the heaters. They're probably stuck on. Are they though? See, this is the part where you gotta diagnosis beyond the diagnosis and asking for one question. Why did this happen? What caused it to happen? That's the biggest question. Don't just go trying to search for what part to replace. Understand what do we have before. Sometimes it will be parts replacement. Sometimes it'll be wire repair. You have to find the why. Because right now, I know this circuit is causing the issue, but why? What is causing the circuit to stay alive? And this is where we go into the next step of diagnosis. Grab our multimeter and this is where you have to have knowledge of reading wiring diagrams and understanding what's what. Here's how a relay works. Very, very basic. You have two sides to a relay. You have a side that has a switch, like literally a pole that gets pulled to close the circuit and lets power through. And on the other side, you have a little coil that when you put power and ground to it, it creates a magnetic field and it pulls that pole to close the circuit. Very simple. So every relay, majority of relays, there are relays that have more, but majority of relays will have 4 pins to them. One of them is the power. One of them is the power that goes to the component, the high amperage component, and then power to the coil, ground to the coil. Let's do our very basic diagnosis here. I'm going to leave this here so we can see. I'm going to connect my negative to the battery. So if I go to power right now, I have 12.54 volts. Doing good. Now, the legs of the relay. Right now with the car off and given that circuit is powered on by the battery direct, I should have power on one of the legs that is coming straight from the battery. It's powered at all times. And I should have ground on the side of the coil. But the other two, I should have nothing. So we're going to test it. Let's look at the readings. I have 12 volts on one of the legs. That means that we're getting power to this straight from the fuse. This is actually a ground. And these two are nothing. What I am looking for is, do we have something turning on this relay with the car off, maybe a short somewhere that is powering on that leg that turns on the coil, which, looking at the diagram, that comes straight from the AC amplifier. Translation for that, HVAC computer. That's what the AC amplifier is. But I don't have that. This is the signal wire that I'm standing on right now here. And the way you know which pin is which is looking at the diagram. This is pin number 2. I don't have power. So basically, I don't have something from the control side of the relay causing the component to stay on, like giving it a signal to stay on. Okay, well, that's one part of the diagnosis. The second part is, do I have something on the wire going to that component that is shorted to power? I hope that makes sense. And the way you know that is, this is that wire. I have nothing. That means my entire circuit is healthy. I don't have any intrusion on that circuit. But wait, what does that do for our diagnosis? What does that mean? That means only one thing. And you can say that with 100% certainty because you did your homework, you diagnosed the issue. You have a bad relay. This relay is stuck on. What happens with these relays is you put so much high power through them. Some of them will last hundreds of thousands of miles, and some of them will just last 20, 30, 40 years. Some of them will just fail. It just depends on the operating conditions. But even that we'll talk about here. This relay is stuck on. Too much temperature got one of the poles to get stuck, and it's stuck. It's always supplying power. Remember, this relay is getting power all the time. Here's a little demonstration of how this relay is stuck on so you can see it live. This is the fan relay. Of course, the engine fans are off, but they always have power to the relay, but the control side is shut off. I'm going to pull this relay out. Put it to the side. I'm going to just lightly plug in our bad relay. Listen to the fan. Once I find how this goes. Bad relay. I'll plug the good relay back. Fans don't come on. That's it. That's all this car needs, folks. So let's ask the very important question. Does this need an alternator? No. Why did this car show up with 3 batteries? It showed up with 2 batteries in the trunk and the third one here. All 3 of them are dead. The 2 in the trunk, done. Tried to charge them, tried to recover them. They're done. This one actually recovered. I don't understand why this didn't happen with the first shop. But the better question is, I will give the credit to the owner of the car because they were on the right track. The only thing they did was they pulled a fuse, the 50 amp fuse that powers that relay, and the draw went away. But this is a fuse that contains 3 circuits in one fuse, 3 50 amp fuses. Toyota loves to use that style fuse. And now when they went to start the car, half the car doesn't work. ABS doesn't work, warning lights, and they're like, oh, we're causing problems. But they never followed that through. Wait, what does these 3 fuses in one power up? That's why I tell you, don't disconnect big fuses when you're doing parasitic draw diagnosis. Disconnect smaller stuff. And if there is no smaller fuse, disconnect the relay to find out if your problem is the supply side to the component or somewhere else. That's how you isolate, and this is very time consuming because you got to do your basics. You can't skip the basics. You got to unplug every single fuse and see. Then you move on to the relays. And when I tell you, oh yeah, it's just a bad relay. Sure, it took me 5 minutes. No, we were on this for probably 6 hours to get to this point because there's relays here, there's relays on this side, there's relays on the inside, both drivers and passenger, there's relays in the trunk. You can't just go straight to the one and do it. I'm not minimizing that this is a lot of effort. It is. But you can't throw a single part until we get to a conclusive diagnosis. I have a faulty relay that is causing a massive draw on this battery. Of course, it's going to go flat in a few hours. You can't skip this stuff, folks. And I don't understand, how does a shop get a car with parasitic draw? I mean, possibly for DIY mechanics that don't have access to diagrams, and even if they do, they might not be as experienced reading diagrams. Maybe they don't have that experience behind them that pushes them. Yes, keep going, you're on the right track. But a shop has no excuse not to diagnose this car. This is not rocket science diagnosis, folks. This is the most basic diagnosis. It is very time consuming. It takes sometimes a very long time to go circuit by circuit, reading the diagram, understanding what's going on. But you got to do that. That's what the customer is paying you for. And you're not going to do this for a few bucks. You spend 6 hours, you potentially could charge this customer 6 hours because that's how much time it took to diagnose this car. But you're not going to charge the customer 6 hours when you looked at the car for 2 minutes and let's fire up the parts cannon. Parts cannon should cost nothing. That's what I'll say here. Folks, this breaks my heart because the owner of the car, who is not a professional mechanic, was on the right track, but the 2 shops were not. This is just sad. Parasitic draw, folks. I want you to know one thing about parasitic draw. You have a modern car, you leave it parked for 2 weeks, or your driving is always 2 and 3 minutes and shut off, 2 and 3 minutes, eventually you're going to kill the battery. Because modern alternators are not meant to recharge a weak battery. They're meant to maintain a healthy battery. The reason for that is, you guessed it, emissions. They don't want a very heavy-duty alternator in these cars dragging the engine down, increasing its emissions. You see a weak battery in your car? Replace it. Don't wait for it to completely fail, because usually what happens is, I've talked about this in another video, a weak battery means you're slowly wiping out your alternator. Because these alternators in modern cars, they're not meant to charge a battery. They're meant to maintain a healthy one. And that's the difference. That's a very important thing that you know. But this should not have gotten this far, folks. This car has been off the road for 7 months for this. And I have a small part in that, 2 parts, and I will flat out admit it. Sorry for this owner that our shop is very busy. We're working day and night here trying to get things up. Our appointments are far away. I apologize for that, but at the same time, we're working very hard to get folks in here. So that's one part of it in. The second part is this car was towed in, I believe, late last week. Today is Monday. It was towed in, I believe, Thursday, and I never had a chance to look into it until today morning. I wanted to look at it Friday, but we got really tied up and had to finish up another car. And this came in first thing, and we spent probably 6 hours on it. We figured it out. We got it. Relays on order. Oil change is overdue because the car has been not driven for 7 months. We're going to do the oil change tomorrow, plug in the relay, do our final tests. The only thing I will say in this situation, and this is something that I do worry about. We did do a running test. And this is something, when you see a situation like this, warn your customer, because this relay failed. The why is a little bit of a mystery. What I mean by we did a running test, we turned on the PTC heaters and we checked how much amperage they were drawing. They were drawing normal, basically the way we compared it, because we have two of them, have PTC1, PTC2, this is PTC2. We compared side to side how much they were drawing. They're drawing about the same. So I don't have a PTC heater, one of them drawing higher than usual, overheating the relay. I don't have that. But I did tell the customer, I want to see this car after a few months, or you got to keep an eye on it, because I want to make sure that we don't have a PTC heater that intermittently drawing way too much, not enough to blow the fuse, but higher than usual, overheating the relay slowly and causing this again. I just want to make sure of that. So this is what we have with this car, folks. Diagnosis is very important. You can never arrive at a point where we're just going to throw this part and see what happens. Well, that alternator takes you no more than 2 minutes to unplug it and see if that 5 amps drops or not. And if it doesn't, that's not it. The end. It's as simple as that. And it breaks my heart that folks out there in shops, they're not doing this. Some folks are doing it, and they should be very proud of doing the right thing. Do your job. That's all I'll say. Do your job. And if you don't know, it's out of your level of expertise. Look, some shops, they don't do electrical diagnosis, and I get that. It takes a lot of experience behind you and a lot of education and continued education to be able to diagnose some of these cars, and I get it. But say it. There's no shame in that. Come to your customer, sit down, look them in the eye. Listen, this is turning out to be outside of our scope of expertise. I don't want to charge you. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. This is outside of our expertise. Please take it to a place that is qualified. Have a nice day, because this is outside of our skill level. And that's perfectly fine. If you drive into our shop right now, and I'll be the first to say it, if you drive right now in our shop, and we have this every single day, we have a call like that. I have a Prado, JDM Prado that has a diesel. Stop right there. I don't work on diesels. Not my area of expertise. I am not going to be learning something at the cost of my customer. Not our area of expertise. We are a Toyota specialty shop. We work on everything Toyota, but diesels. So I'll start by saying that. There's no shame in it. Don't learn at the cost of your customer. Learn in your personal car, or better yet, go get education and learn on the job properly with supervision and guidance. It's very important, folks. You should never shame a shop for saying this is outside of our area of expertise, because firing a parts cannon when they have no idea what's going on is not good, flat out. And we are totally filming this part after we wrapped up the video, so don't mind everything changed all of a sudden. I promised you I would show you another way to do parasitic draw, and I didn't film it, so keeping them honest here, telling you that I totally forgot about that. So most folks will not have a fancy clamp meter, amp meter here with a clamp and whatnot. This is expensive. Unless you're a house electrician, you should have this in your toolbox. Just use it. It's the same thing. But most folks will have a multimeter. Don't need a fancy one. I'm going to switch to our amps, and I want to tell you a few things about that. Most meters will have 3 or 4 of these. You'll have an amp and a common and voltage, resistance and whatnot. In this case, we're going to use the common and the amperage. Do not have these two plugged in and you touch the meter leads, because you'll blow the internal fuse. You can replace it, not a big deal, but then kind of stops the diagnosis. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to unplug the negative terminal on your battery. During your testing, don't let the terminal touch the post, because first you blow the fuse on your meter, second, it'll make your test inaccurate. The way amp meters work, you need to complete the circuit through the meter. Basically, what this meter has inside of it is one of these. That's all it is. It's going to measure the amperage going through it. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect our common, connect to this. So the way this works is your common needs to go on the post, your red one or the amps need to go on the terminal, and the reason for that is you want the flow of electricity to go through the meter and back here. So we want to go through the positive, and then on the common we come back. I hope that makes sense. But let's watch what happens when we do this. I'm going to hold this here and I'm going to connect my amperage. Right now, this would be the same if I just connected my battery back. It's going to be high. You're going to have to wait for like 20-25 minutes plus for this reading to actually settle down to a very small number, which in our case is going to be right around 0.1, somewhere in that range, or just under 0.1 for this particular car. Now, right now, when you see this, if after 25 minutes you have still 0.7 amps, that's actually parasitic draw in most cars. I mean, the highest Toyota you'll see, it'll draw 0.1, 0.2. 0.2 is about as on the high side for some of the modern cars with security systems. If you have a remote start or aftermarket, it's going to draw a little bit more, but you're never going to see half an amp. Half an amp will kill the battery overnight, possibly over 2 nights. That's how you catch parasitic draw. Now, what is the specification? That's another good question that some of you have asked in the past about parasitic draw. Unfortunately, there is no spec. They don't publish a spec for this. You kind of have to go by experience. A good number is right around 0.2 and less, preferably on older cars, less than 0.1. You just start talking milliamps. And just by us talking, look how much that dropped. It's already 0.3. Things are shutting down. The complete shutdown will be after 20 minutes. But the reason it's not dropping below, we have the window open, keys in the car, hood latch is not latched, so you need to manually push your hood latch closed because there's a switch there. You need to close all windows, especially in modern cars, lock the doors and keep the key away from the car. Then you'll see a lower number than that. Because right now, the key is communicating. The computer knows that the hood is open, it's alive, the window's open. Some of these cars catch the windows. So this is how you're gonna use the second method, which is using a very simple multimeter to check for your parasitic draw. Folks, I hope this video was helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some other videos. Until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.